Kia ora. It's great to have you with us for this sixth episode in these series of teaching videos I'm doing on a biblical response to COVID-19. In the last 5 videos, we've come to these 5 key biblical responses: trust God, lament honestly, pray anxieties, rest deeply, and in the last video on choose joy. And today I want to talk about this idea of embrace now. Embrace now. In other words, I'm talking about embracing this season, this time that we're in right now as a gift from God. The Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes was written about 3,000 years ago, most probably by King Solomon. And in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, there is this beautiful poem about the seasons and times of life. It begins this way, Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1, "There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens." These words were immortalized in a song that came out in the 60s called Turn, Turn, Turn. But it goes on, a time for everything and a season for every activity, and then the poem lasts another 7 verses, and it just talks about all these different seasons of life. Verse 2, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, and on it goes. 14 couplets, 14 pairs, 28 different descriptions of seasons and times in life. It's a beautiful expression of the way that life works. And it's been interpreted many different ways, but my belief is that really it's calling us to embrace every season of life under God. To embrace now, I think, is calling for 2 responses from us. The first part of embracing now, I think, is a call to trust. It's an act of trust in God. After this poem in Ecclesiastes 3 in the first 8 verses, there's then a reflection by the teacher, the author of Ecclesiastes. And in verse 11, it's particularly helpful. Here's what it says. "He, which is God, has made everything beautiful in its time. He's also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end." It's saying 2 key things about the season of life that we may find ourselves in. Number 1, God brings good out of every season we may go through. They may be good seasons, some of these things that are described in the poem. Others may be quite hard. But what this verse is saying is that God can make something beautiful. He can bring something good out of every season of life. But then the other thing it's saying is that God has set eternity in the human heart. In other words, He's put in us a desire. We long to know and understand how this particular season fits into the great tapestry of life. But we can't fathom that. Only God knows what He's doing from beginning to end. There's that imagery of a tapestry where we can only view the underneath of the tapestry, and we see the mixed up colours and the dangling threads and all the knots and everything. But what God sees in the view above is the entire tapestry of what God, the plan that He is weaving for the world. And so this is really a call to trust God. To embrace the now is really an invitation to believe that God can take whatever season we're in and bring something beautiful out of it, and also can weave that into the great tapestry of what He's doing. So the call to embrace now is to really embrace by faith the belief that God knows what He's doing, and that even the seasons of life that can be quite hard, like a lockdown for example, God can bring good out of that and weave that into the bigger picture of what He's doing in the world. But there's another part to this I want to bring out too. I think to embrace the now, embrace the season, is not only to believe God can bring something good, but to look for opportunities that we can seize as well. When the ancient Greeks thought about time, they actually had 2 different words they would use for time. They used the word chronos, from which we get our word chronology. And chronos is what the word that they used when they were talking about time as a duration, as something fixed and measurable. So time in terms of quantity, whether that quantity was minutes or hours or days or months or years. So chronos is talking about time in measurable units and its duration. But they had a second word they used too, kairos. Kairos wasn't time so much in its measurable duration, but in its opportunity. So it's a much more qualitative word than quantitative. What's fascinating is that about 200 years before Jesus was born, some Hebrew scholars took the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament, and translated it into the ancient Greek language, because Greek by then was becoming the common language of the known world. And when they came to this passage, Ecclesiastes 3, this poem that uses the word time 29 times, a time for everything, these ancient Hebrew scholars did not use the Greek word chronos. They instead used the word kairos. In other words, when what Solomon is describing, what the teacher is describing here in this beautiful poem in Ecclesiastes, is not fixed time, measurable durations of our lives. It's not the chronological times and seasons, but in a sense it's the different times or seasons, the opportunities that exist in every phase of our lives. It's a qualitative idea. But it's an opportunity, in other words, of approaching each season of our lives as an opportunity. What can we learn? How can we grow? What can we seize in this moment? And my belief is that to embrace the now is to start taking a different approach than maybe we are to this current season we're in of lockdown and shutdown and pandemic. You see, in New Zealand at least, we're in a 4-week lockdown. We've just gone past the halfway mark. We're in the third week. And for most of us, we are thinking about this time, this season, from a chronos point of view. In other words, we're counting how many days through are we and how many days are there still to go. And I completely get that. I'm counting down to meeting friends for a flat white and a date's gone as well. But can I suggest that to embrace the now means we don't only look at this time we're in from a chronos point of view, but a kairos point of view, which means taking this season of lockdown and shutdown and not just measuring how long to go, but also thinking, what is the opportunity that this gives me? How can I embrace this time? How can I use this season? Not just trust that God will bring something good out of it, although that's important, but also seize the opportunity it's giving me as well. See, to embrace the now is to both trust that God will bring good out of it and that God's going to weave this season into His plan, but also for us to look at this season, not just a chronos, a time to be counted off, but as a kairos, an opportunity to be lived into and embraced and seized. And so I want to leave you with 2 questions in this video today. The first one is, what do you need to embrace? As you look at this season, maybe if you're in New Zealand or somewhere else in the world, you're in lockdown and it's hard and it's, you're enduring, you're counting down the days. I understand that. But what do you need to embrace in this time, in this season? Is this an opportunity to spend more time with family, with your kids, or with your spouse? Is this an opportunity to step back and slow down a little bit from normal life? Is this an opportunity to maybe work on your fitness and build some of that into your life? Is this an opportunity to spend much more time with God than you have in a long time? Is this an opportunity to step back and look at the direction of your life, or where your career is going, or how your business is operating and whether you need to make some new moves? What is it that you need to embrace in this season? But then equally too, what do you need to release? What do you need to let go of? Because part of what Ecclesiastes is saying is, if it's a time, a season to plant, it's generally then not a season to, it's not at the same time as an opportunity to reap. Those are different seasons of life. And if there's some things for you to embrace in this season, maybe there's some things for you to release. Maybe if you're going to really embrace this as a time with God, you need to release some expectations about how much work you're going to get done. Or maybe if you're working from home and your spouse is working from home, or they're an emergency worker and you've got kids at home, what do you need to release to allow you to embrace? Maybe some of you had big plans if you've got kids that you were going to do this amazing homeschooling thing and your kids were going to be further ahead than anyone else's kids. But maybe what you need to embrace is this opportunity to have fun with them, and you need to release the expectations of how much schoolwork you're going to get done. But I think for us to embrace the now is to recognize that this is a season not only that God can bring good out of, and we need to trust Him for that, but this is a season, a time for us to really grasp the opportunity. So what is it you need to embrace? What does this season offer you? And what do you also need to release to take that opportunity? Because this is a unique season we will never have again. And can I encourage you, don't just endure this. Embrace it as a gift from a God who loves you. Embrace now. God bless.